and within Simi Valley. So with that, Roland, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's see, give you some visuals. I do need screen sharing capabilities.
Just a quick visual for our Spanish-speaking families. Give it another, few seconds and then go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Yeah, Roland, you should be able to share your screen now.
Perfect. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as I can tell on my end, my screen should be sharing. Can I get a verification?
Yes, we see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So good evening, everybody. I'm glad you're with us tonight. My name is Roland. I work with Bright as a youth development and engagement specialist. As Jen mentioned, Bright is an acronym. It stands for Building Resilience and Inclusion through Engagement, which is what we do as an organization. We are a nonprofit and we partner with Ventura County Behavioral Health, Ventura County Public Health, Ventura County Office of Education, and many of the school districts and charter schools all throughout Ventura County. If you have any questions during the presentation, please wait till the end of the Q&A. The slides are numbered, you'll notice on the top right. I encourage you to have a pen and paper handy. So if you see a slide and you have a question, please write down the number of that slide so we can refer to it at the end. Give you a minute to get that paper and pencil. If not, you can use your phone. Typically they have a notepad, so you can do that. And it is possible that we may experience some technical difficulties. If that does occur, we'll try our best to fix them as soon as they arise. And we'll go ahead and move forward. So vaping and what you need to know. Tonight's agenda will include the e-products and vape devices, vaping nicotine and marijuana, short and long-term health effects. We'll have some tips for you at the end, and there'll be some tips sprinkled in throughout the presentation, and then we'll have our questions and answers. So some of you may have heard about e-cigarettes, specifically e-cigarettes like Juul, Puff Bar, Fix, Smoke, Enjoy, Views, and Soarin'. Those are some of the more popular ones. They have grown in popularity over the current years. Many users wrongly believe that these devices are harmless. We're going to take a look at why many health professionals are concerned about these electronic nicotine delivery systems, also known as ENDS. So vaping is the use of an electronic cigarette, also known as vaporizers, vape pens, e-cigarettes, mods, or ENDS. So I just want to break down real quick for you how these work. At the tip, you'll have the mouthpiece. This is where the user would inhale. Attached to that is what's known as the tank or the chamber, and that's where the e-juice is, the liquid, which can be nicotine-based or marijuana-based. In order for it to work, it has to have an atomizer, which is a heating element that heats up the liquid, and it has to have a battery in order to make it work. And then some of them have a button that you push, like an off and on button, or some of them you simply inhale, it'll automatically release a certain amount of the vape juice. So e-cigarettes come in many different shapes and sizes. As we noted a moment ago, they all have a chamber to hold the e-juice or the liquid. They all have a battery to make them work, and most of them contain nicotine. So take a look at this slide. Take a moment and examine. Can you tell which of these are vapes? I'll give you a moment to look it over. The answer is all of them. These are all vape devices. These are some of the ones that most students are using. Now, you may wonder who makes these vape devices. The simple answer is it's the big tobacco companies. It started off small with a few vape products, and then once the tobacco companies saw their sales to decline, they panicked. So what they did is they started to go out and buy all of the vape device companies, and then they started creating their own. So big tobacco brands such as Camel, Newport, Marlboro have kept up with those products. They were competing mainly with Juul. Juul was the big #1 best-selling product. It was very unique and original. This is the Juul. It looks kind of like a USB drive or a thumb drive. It's very modern, got a very tech look to it. And this one's called the Soren Drop. It actually has a very solid weight, so it fits very comfortable in your hand. It's not too big, so if the user simply wraps their hand around it like a fist, it becomes invisible. And all they have to do is put their hand up to their mouth like they're going to cough and inhale. So very simple, easy to use. This little guy is a THC or marijuana cartridge, known simply by cart. A lot of times the kids will just say, do you have a cart with you? Or I need a cart. That amber color you see in there is the THC, the marijuana oil. This one is a charger. It's used to connect the vape battery to the charging device, like how you'd connect your phone to a battery. Some of these are specifically designed to be used on a vape cartridge battery. It cannot be used on a cell phone. So if you ever find something like this in your son or daughter's room and you ask them what it is, they say, oh, it's just my phone charger. Ask them to show you how it works. The ones that work on vape, or more specifically, the THC vape cartridge devices will not attach to a phone. One of our biggest concerns with pod device e-cigarettes among young people is that they can deliver the same amount of nicotine released from more than a whole pack of cigarettes. Hookah pens and electronic cigarettes. These flavors and cartridges colors are concerning since they are attracting young people. Look at how they are marketing these products with the bright colors, little characters on top of the vape pens. There are over 7,000 different flavors to attract kids, like cherry, watermelon, mango. There's even one called unicorn poop. Crazy names to dare kids to try it to see what it tastes like. Puff bars, the next big hit. So puff bars mimic the once popular Juul and its many copycat e-cigarette devices, but these are designed for one-time use. Each device is pre-charged, pre-filled. Once the juice runs out, it cannot be recharged or refilled like other product devices like Juul. They cost as low as $4.60 with up to 7% nicotine, which is a higher concentration than Juul. And they advertise that they're good for about 200 puffs before it runs out. Puff Bar now offers the Puff Flow at $20. You get a maintenance-free, pre-filled, disposable device that offers over 1,000 puffs per disposable unit. That's approximately equivalent to 3 packs of cigarettes. I know for me personally, I have gone to the supermarket or walking in a park, and I have seen these discarded in the bushes or in the parking lots. These are also an environmental issue. These get run over by cars, they break in half. You have to remember, it is an electronic device, and there are chemicals in it, which can get soaked down into our groundwater. So if you don't know, a standard pack of cigarettes contains about 20 cigarettes per pack. There's about 1 milligram of nicotine absorption per cigarette. So about 20 milligrams of nicotine is delivered to the body from a whole pack of cigarettes. According to Juul Labs, 1 Juul pod contains 4.3 milligrams of nicotine. That's equal to the amount of nicotine you'll find in about 40 cigarettes. A Juul pod is equal to about 2 packs of cigarettes. 1 puff bar contains about 50 milligrams of nicotine, which is equivalent to about 50 cigarettes. How many packs of cigarettes would a puff bar be equal to? About 2.5 packs of cigarettes. No matter what pod device you're using, all of them contain a high level of nicotine, which is extremely addictive. It keeps them coming back for more. So some products might say contains no nicotine, when in fact they do. And they are legally allowed to make that claim because it contains a very small amount of nicotine, which is not considered addictive to a fully adult developed brain. But it is enough to be considered addictive to a developing brain, like a teenager. So this is just a small chart I wanted to share with you. The most common ways the e-cigarettes industries present the amount of nicotine in their e-juice is in milligrams per milliliter, or percentage of nicotine by weight or volume. The labeling of nicotine is inconsistent and sometimes represented in milligrams, micrograms, milliliters by weight. Sometimes they're not labeled at all. Now, how confused are you so far? Think about how your confusion can benefit the e-cigarette industry. For many years, consumers were told that the clouds made by e-cigarettes or vape pens were just water vapor. Do you think that's true? E-cigarettes or vape pens allow the user to make large clouds that many think is just water vapor. In reality, the cloud is a mixture of many different chemicals that were either present in the liquid before or it was developed after during the heating process. And some people or some companies might say that they don't put those chemicals in there, which may be true. But if you know chemistry, when you heat up certain chemicals to a certain degree, it creates more chemicals. So you probably are aware that water vapor is steam. So if you're boiling water, you're going to be making spaghetti. That steam that comes off the top is water vapor, and it evaporates very quickly. An aerosol is a mixture of liquid particles suspended in a gas and can contain several chemicals, hundreds of chemicals. So instead of just mixing in with the air like water vapor, aerosols can leave droplets of residue on surfaces, on your clothes, your hair, and in your lungs. So I want to talk a little bit about vaping and marijuana. Marijuana's potency has increased in the past decade, up from about 4% in the 80s to an average of 12 to 24% THC in today's. Out of the 400 different chemicals found in a marijuana plant, THC is the main mood-altering ingredient. It's the chemical that gets somebody high or stoned. Marijuana extracts or concentrates used in vaping and edibles can contain an average of 50% to over 90% THC. They come in an oil and solid forms. Here we have some slang words that some people might use to describe cannabis or marijuana, say in a text or if they're writing a note. They might text their friend the letters 710. 710 is the word oil if you flip it upside down and spell it backwards. They might say, hey, having problems with earwax. They're talking about marijuana. Honey oil, butter, butane hash oil, butane honey oil or BHO, shatter, dabs or dabbing, black glass, or they might just say, hey, let's meet up with Earl. ERRL. Now, if you see any of those on somebody's text or in a message, they're probably talking about, let's hook up and get stoned, let's smoke some marijuana. So let's take a look at the aerosol composition. All of these have been found in e-cigarettes or vape pen aerosols. Many of them are known to be harmful, as determined by the FDA. And while we don't know at this time, many of those are the same chemicals found in traditional cigarettes. Simply put, e-cigarettes produce an aerosol that often contains many harmful chemicals and toxins. Some are known to cause cancer. Now, no one has actually developed cancer from vaping, not yet, but the potential is there because the chemicals that we know that cause cancer in cigarettes, those chemicals are in vape juice also. It typically takes time, many years, for someone to develop cancer from those chemicals. Nicotine itself is a highly addictive compound. Most vape products contain nicotine, and many have those chemicals and toxins. I won't even try to pronounce most of these. As you just saw, many chemicals have been identified in e-juice, and 30 have been identified to actually cause cancer. For example, propylene glycol can be found in antifreeze products. Acetone, which is commonly used as nail polish remover and as a paint thinner. Ethylbenzene is often used as a base to make other chemicals. It's also found in products including pesticides, synthetic rubber, varnishes, paints, and inks. Formaldehyde-based solutions are also used in embalming, disinfecting, or temporarily preserving human or animal remains. Maybe the most important is nicotine. Nicotine is a drug that's highly addictive in moderate doses. And the reason why smokers smoke even after they start getting sick is because their brain has become addicted. So technically, nicotine is a poison. One drop of pure nicotine is enough to kill somebody. They used to use it in insecticides, but it was so powerful that it wasn't killing just the insecticides that they intended to kill. It was killing any insect that came in contact with it. There's rubidium is a chemical that is used in fireworks and to make the bright colors. So what are some of the short-term effects? Cough, headache, dizziness, throat irritation, eye irritation, mild airway obstruction, throat and vocal cord inflammation. Doesn't sound that bad, right? The FDA discovered another health risk. Young adults and teens are having seizures caused by the high toxic levels of nicotine in the brain. That's a short-term effect. Other short-term effects are several different lung diseases like popcorn lung or cobalt disease. Those are short-term effects. One of the most shocking short-term effects is death. People are dying from these products caused by those lung diseases. Other major ingredients in e-juice is propylene glycol, which is known as a hygroscopic substance. It's a substance that attracts and holds water molecules from its environment, like the mouth, preventing them from being absorbed by the body. This is the reason that many vape users complain about being thirsty all the time or having a dry mouth, which can be alleviated by drinking a lot of water. So if your son or daughter is always asking for water, but they're not exercising, they're not outside playing, they're not doing sports, that might be a red flag. The water holding effects of propylene glycol can also dry out the nasal passages, which can cause random bleeding nose. It can also make your eyes dry and itchy. It can make your skin dry. It can cause dark circles under the eyes. Some other side effects could be that they're tired or lethargic, no enthusiasm, sore muscles, or even dark urine. Those are all red flags. If your son or daughter is complaining, or if you notice any of these things, they're asking for lotion more often, because they have dry skin. It could be because or directly related to vaping. So what about secondhand exposure to that vape aerosol? You probably have seen it. One of the first times I ever saw it, I was driving down the street, came up to a stop sign, and the car next to me, this huge white plume of smoke came out of the car, which confused me because I thought maybe their radiator blew up or their car was on fire. That was several years ago. Now I know better. It was their vape product. So that big cloud is actually a toxic cloud of chemicals. So if you're hanging out with somebody who's vaping and that cloud gets in your face and you're just standing there breathing normally, you are actually breathing in the same chemicals that they are. So when they took a hit off of that vape product, those chemicals went into the lungs and most of it came out and some of it stayed in the lungs. So it's kind of like secondhand smoke. We all know that secondhand smoke is harmful to somebody who doesn't smoke. This is very similar. It's the chemicals floating in the air. And if somebody's smoking in their home and they exhale and that cloud floats across the room, it is literally dropping little rain droplets of those chemicals landing on their coffee table or maybe their couch. So think about if those chemicals are landing on your coffee table, your dining room table. Any child that comes along and is walking by and puts their fingers all over that table and then puts their fingers in their mouth are consuming those chemicals. What about the long-term effects? The use of vapes has been linked to higher rates of pneumonia. So if you know somebody who does vape, you might want to thank them for being a walking lab rat, for donating their body to science and to the medical field. It's because of their use that we will learn more about the long-term health effects. I know it sounds sarcastic, but it is true. So let's talk a little bit about the teen brain. Teen brains are more prone or susceptible to addiction because it's still developing. The brain develops in a back to front pattern. The prefrontal cortex, which governs judgment and executive decision-making, is the last part of the brain to develop. This may explain why kids are more prone to risk-taking, to not thinking about consequences, vulnerability to drug use, and why exposure to drugs at this critical time may affect propensity to future addiction. So nicotine, as we all know, is highly addictive and it is extremely hard to quit. Nicotine creates a pathway in the brain called addiction. If they start experimenting with other drugs, those other drugs don't have to create their own pathways, which normally takes time. So those other drugs will use the same pathway that nicotine already created, making addiction to other drugs happen more quickly. Not sure if you've seen in maybe TV, in the news, in newspapers about how some of these products are exploding. They have been known to explode, causing car fires, house fires, broken teeth, fractured bones, and even death. So in the next slide, I'd like to share with you what we've been learning from students. So what I do is I go out to middle schools and high schools all over Ventura County. One of the things that we created to raise awareness is a Jeopardy-style game show. It has categories such as vaping, alcohol, prescription drugs, and tobacco. The students are put into teams, and they have a remote keypad to answer the questions, which are typically multiple choice, A, B, C, D, or E. The students get very competitive. They have a lot of fun while at the same time learning about the health risks and the legal risks and how it impacts their future. One of the questions in the game simply asks two questions. Why do teens choose to vape? And why would they choose not to vape? In the next slide, I'd like to share with you some of the most common things that we've been told in classrooms by students. Reasons why they choose to vape: peer pressure, wanting to fit in. They think it's cool, it makes them look mature because their family or their friends use them. That they're safer than cigarettes. Simple curiosity, they taste good, and self-medicating. Now, they don't actually say they use them to self-medicate, but what they do say, I think, is a lot more shocking. They say they use these products to help themselves deal with things like stress, depression, low self-worth, and anxiety. Those are the words that come out of their mouth. Of course, they'll first say they think it's cool, they want to fit in with friends, and then eventually one student raise their hand and say, because it helps with mental issues. And I'll ask them to elaborate. Can you be more specific? And then that same student or a different student will pipe up and say, it helps with depression. So then it allows us to have a discussion about what that means if they are experiencing stress or depression or anxiety. I try to explain to them that if they're using these products to help with those problems, they need help, that these products don't actually serve a purpose of helping them. It actually is making it worse. They may feel it temporarily helps because if they are depressed and they get a spike from nicotine, it makes them feel really good. And then when they come down off of the nicotine, they crash and feel worse than they did to begin with. On campus, they're typically used in the bathrooms, also known as the vape room. And classroom students challenge each other to vape behind the teacher's back, and they tend to post it on social media, taking pictures and sharing it with other students. They also have what's known as plume or smoke cloud contests and tricks. It's a very thick white cloud, and they can actually swing their hands and their fingers and arms around to make shapes. So what can you do if you find your child is vaping? You might want to emphasize to your teen that the terms vaping and smoking are essentially the same thing in your eyes. That way they can't say, Mom, I'm not smoking, I'm just vaping, and try and get out of trouble. Remember to keep an eye out for those teaching moments. For example, if you see a car and a big white cloud comes pouring out, don't be afraid to ask them if they know what that is. Start the conversation casually. You might say, wow, look at that. Do you know what that is? And they might say, yeah, Mom, that's vape. Well, what is vape? To start the conversation being inquisitive so that you can learn what they do know and that you can open that conversation up. So you're probably here today because you care and you want to learn and understand. Share what you've learned. Educate yourselves. You can better explain how and why these devices are not only dangerous, but deadly. When someone asks me if vaping is safer than smoking, I usually say something like this. Cigarettes have been around for over 100 years, and it took decades for us to discover that smoking was responsible for causing things like emphysema, lung disease, cancer, and death. Vaping has only been around for maybe 14, 15 years, and they've already gained a huge popularity. The first vape-related death was in August of 2019 and has already caused irreversible lung injuries and death. Now, at the time we've added up these numbers, that was probably a couple of years ago. We had over 2,800 hospitalizations, over 70 deaths. So which one do you think is more deadly? Remember, cigarettes, it took decades for problems with your lungs and emphysema and cancer. Vape products are causing lung injuries in a fraction of the time. This is what a vape-related illness looks like. Vaping can cause acute lung disease. What's the treatment for vape-related lung disease? How do we treat this illness? There is no cure. There's only supportive care. You end up in the ICU on life support, supporting organs, but the damage is already done. The damage is permanent. On dialysis, medication to augment blood pressure. Some of these diseases prevent oxygen from oxygenating your blood. You now have a problem delivering oxygen to your organs, your kidneys, brain, liver damage, multiple organ failures. Vaping does not cause just one lung disease. It can cause several, and it can be different from person to person. Diseases like popcorn lung and cobalt disease and many others. permanent scarring or burns in the lung tissues or inflammation. I also want to point out that someone who vapes is 5 times more likely to fall ill or die from SARS-CoV-2, which stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. Vaping in itself causes acute lung disease, and their lungs are already compromised by vaping. So if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If they vape, they have a low immune system and their lungs are already damaged. So if they do contract COVID, it's going to be harder for their lungs and their body to fight it off. So they're more susceptible to fall ill. So allow for meaningful participation in positive activities like sports, youth groups, and service groups. Opportunities to experience natural rewards. Stay involved with your children's activities where appropriate, like social or academic or extracurricular. Get involved, talk with them, find out what's important. If you don't want your son or daughter, your kids to use these devices, you probably shouldn't be using them yourself. You're setting a precedence, and you're exposing the ones that you love and care for to toxic chemicals. So I want to share with you some resources. If you have your phone handy, you can take a picture of the slides, next few slides I'm going to share with you. So I'll give you a moment to grab that. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. This is the National Institute Their mission is to advance science on the causes of consequence of drug use and addiction, and to apply that knowledge to improve prevention and treatment of substance use disorders and enhance public awareness of addiction as a brain disorder. It's a great parents' web resource, and it's easy to read. This next one, the Parent Toolkit. It's kind of a one-stop resource development with parents in mind. It includes information about almost every aspect of your child's development. For example, we're talking about brain development. Our brains stop developing in our early 20s. So if they are experimenting with nicotine, vape products, THC, marijuana, it can disrupt their brain development. And again, if you want to take a picture of these resources, so before we move on to the questions and answer portion, I just want to share with you a couple of things. June of last year, the Biden administration said it will develop a proposed rule to establish a maximum nicotine level in cigarettes and other vape products that will essentially lower the amount of nicotine products available in the United States. We'll have to see how that one goes. After a 2-year battle, Governor Newsom banned all flavored tobacco products in California, except the laws aren't clear. There's a lot of, they finally got it to pass. So actually what happened 2 years ago, Biden signed it into law. The tobacco company fought it by getting the necessary signatures to make it so it has to go to ballot, so we'd have to vote on it. A lot of people didn't think that we would win because big tobacco companies have a lot of money. They got a lot of money to spend on advertising, a lot of money to, put it short and sweet, pay people off. So we won by a landslide. So it went through. Now, the next step is, how do we enforce those laws? How do we make it more clear? What happens if a store is still selling these flavored products? So that's our next step. Something else to keep an eye out for are brands saying nicotine or tobacco free. What that means is it's synthetically produced nicotine, also known as non-tobacco nicotine. So again, it's very misleading. All right, I'm done. I think we can open up to questions.
Thank you so much, Roland. First, we're going to go ahead and have Brian Cox from Simi Valley High School go ahead and speak on the policies and procedures we have for the district at the high school level.
Awesome.
And you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. First of all, I just want to say thank you just to this whole team and everybody for putting this evening together. My name is Brian Cox. I am an assistant principal at Simi Valley High School, but in Simi Valley Unified, we're a team, the whole district. I know that I speak with all the other high schools and the middle schools at times regarding these situations. And I know this is a difficult topic to discuss. And as difficult as it is, knowing about it is more important than not knowing about it. It's out there, and no matter what we do or what we think, it's going to be out there. It could be at any school, any public school, any private school. Vaping is a real thing. It's everywhere, and kids can get it very easily. It's accessible, and it's really sad. You know, when it first came out, when I first became an administrator, actually, it was obviously cigarettes and chewing tobacco and all these other things that happen. Every generation of student has a different problem that goes on in the schools, and vaping is just something that grew and attached and fast forwarded, something that we didn't see coming, I guess. But now that it's here, we know about it. And unfortunately, with that being said, there has to be stuff that we can do to help them. I saw that in Roland in the presentation, there were tons of resources. Here at the school site, we do have resources that we give to the parents, including 211. We use different agencies that we can put out there that are actually in CME that help students. But more importantly, is when we do catch kids vaping, the most important thing is having that parent or guardian involvement immediately. It doesn't matter what we do and what our first steps are. We have to let the parent know. Most of the time, the parents already know, or they don't know, and it's something that they need our support. So with this being said, over the years, when it took us off guard at first, we had to create a multi-tiered system, because instead of just going straight to a extreme punishment or consequence for this, we had to set up different steps. And including those steps, there's different ways of going about it. There's possession of the vape in itself, not using it, consequence. Then there's a possession of using the vape and having it on you kind of consequence. And then there's another one where you're actually using the vape in the classroom or in the facility, library, locker room, whatever. We kind of had to separate those because we didn't want to have the same kind of consequences for everything that happened. I got to tell you though, one of the biggest things that we do to be involved with vaping is we want the kids to know we're looking for it. We want to be out there. We want to be present. We want to be near the restrooms. Our campus supervisors are near the restrooms. We want to deter kids from even doing this. So we put our adults and admin and counseling, everybody out and around. And that itself has lowered the usage. Going back to what I was saying about the multi-tiered system, when a student is caught in possession, only having it, not using it, we usually start with an in-person conference, a phone conference to the parent. We document it in Aries, and we discuss these things that Roland was talking to you. We're all versed very well in the effects of what vaping does. We try to get those kids to understand this because most of them don't know about it. The second offense for possession, just having it, is an hour after school detention. Then what I generally do is I give them an essay, a kind of a homework report where they go and they write about the negative side effects of vaping. And, you know, most of the time they copy it or plagiarize it from the website, but they're looking at it, they're reading it. And then they have to present that to me or bring it back to me. Officer Collado actually has done this as well. And the kids actually present him with the essays as well. For a third offense for vaping, it kind of ends up being where you have, it's called an in-house kind of suspension. We keep the kid here with us at the school. They're given that, the parent is notified, there's a parent conference, and it's again documented in Aries. That's the easy level. That's just catching a kid with a vape in their hand, not using it. The secondary one is when they're using it on campus. That's where we kind of have to step it up. When we catch a kid doing it on campus or using it, they are kept here with us for the remainder of the day. Parents are immediately contacted. There is a phone call, a conference with that parent and documentation. If it's a secondary offense where they are caught vaping on campus again, then it is a 1-day home suspension. Okay. And a parent conference again. That's where we kind of step it up. Every time we catch them smoking on campus, it usually steps up. I do have to be honest that usually when we catch a kid, once in a great moon, we catch that kid again. Most of the time it stops and that kid understands the consequences. And then obviously it moves on to someone else who we catch. But we try to keep it to where those kids, we work with them. We try to be restorative. We try to present them with the resources. We don't want to suspend kids for vaping. In my opinion, in the campus and what we've talked about at the district level too at times, is that this has become an addiction. This has become something where these kids, like Roland was saying, it's cool, it's candy, it tastes great, it smells great, it's cotton candy flavored. And then they smoke it once and it becomes an addiction. The thing with that is we don't want to be punitive for kids that are addicted to this stuff. We want to help them get off of it. So a lot of the consequences we give are actually here on campus with us. Now, needless to say, there's one more thing I'll touch on, and then I'll let Gene, Officer Clado take it, is that obviously in vaping, and it was touched briefly, it was actually in a lot of the slides that Roland presented in the beginning, there are vape pens that are marijuana. It's THC, it's wax. And it's in the earlier pictures that were shown, they were the little cartridges that actually look like a wax, like a thicker juice. That is actually marijuana. And unfortunately with drugs, there is a suspension. It's the same thing though. We do offer them options to work with the suspensions, to get help. And if they get that help, we can lower the suspension. At the same time, we want the parents to know about what's going on. If anyone ever has a question about what's this or what they find, I don't care what school your child goes to. If you ever want to email me, you can reach out to me. It's the same thing. It's brian.cox at simivaluesd.org. You can always email me about questions. I'm always around to answer those for you. Okay, I hope that was helpful. There's a whole lot more I want to tell you about. But I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Officer Collado now for him to go ahead.
Actually, if I could just jump in for
Yes.
one moment. Mr. Cox, thank you so much for that information. My name is Dr. Jerry Block. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. And I just want to reiterate, our number one priority is always student safety. And we want to make sure that students are getting the help, especially if we see them becoming addicted. But also it is to keep our entire school campus safe also. And so, if students are vaping on campus, we are going to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Situations are different. If a student were vaping in a classroom, we can't accept that at all. Students would be suspended for that. If students are using a marijuana device, that is a lot more serious. If students are selling product, they are going to, if not be suspended, they are going to be put up for expulsion. So of course, we want our students to be safe, and we want to let them know we are absolutely here to support them to get the help that they need to wean themselves off of these products. But we also are absolutely serious in making sure that our campuses remain safe, and that the students understand that this is not acceptable to do on campus.
And now if we can move on to Officer Collado, and he can talk a little bit about local laws and where the police come in. And I'll let you know that we do have a couple of questions in the question and answer area about the laws. So I'll let you go.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming to this. It's extremely important to know, as this is probably one of the most things that we deal with as a school resource officer to administrators, starting in middle school all the way up. It seems over the past 5 years, it's been starting, we're almost getting them in the 6th grade right now that are going up to the middle school. So it's definitely something that's catching on. I'll be the first one to tell you, once the laws come in that says, okay, well, you're no longer allowed to sell this, these companies have attorneys, these companies have a lot of smart people that they'll change a molecule or they'll change something to be able to push their product more. Then another law comes in. So the best way that I can see the deal with this is as a unit, law enforcement, school, and your children. There's a few ways that we go about this. At the middle school level, it goes a little bit quicker to the suspension because that's where we're kind of seeing where everything is starting. Once you come into middle school from an elementary school level, you're exposed to 100 new things, and unfortunately, some of those things are the vaping. And what they end up doing with that is in the middle school level, the first offense that they get into is restorative justice. They'll go in front of a panel, they'll have to write a paper of the harmful effects. And then what they'll end up doing from that, if they do it again and get caught, then it equals a suspension. They go a little bit quicker than the high school because we want to be able to start correcting that behavior at a little younger level to not get into the high school and get it to kind of blow up a little bit. Back in 2016, when they changed the law from nicotine usage to 21 and older, they also did away with having it be a crime if somebody under the age of 21 was in possession of it. Maybe if you guys remember back in school, when you were caught with a cigarette, it was actually a misdemeanor offense. Not so much anymore. There's no law that prohibits minors from actually possessing it. They actually go after, the laws are more towards the businesses. So it ties our hands a little bit more. And to give you a little bit of an example, if law enforcement catches a juvenile with marijuana, if he catches one of these wax pens, it's pretty much an infraction. It's the equivalent of a speeding ticket. I choose not to allow the kids to kind of know that due to the simple fact that it kind of changes their impression on what exactly they're doing. So again, the laws do not allow us to do a lot of enforcement because we're real big into the age of restorative justice, even on the criminal aspect of it when it comes to juveniles. So again, it's so strong and it's so important that the parents reach out to each other, reach out to the administrators, law enforcement. I'm here for any questions at any time. I work with these kids on a daily basis. And the best thing that we can do is educate and be consistent. When it comes down to parents, when you catch your son or daughter doing these things, make sure you check their room, make sure that you're checking their backpack, make sure that you're kind of being consistent with whatever consequences that you guys feel is appropriate for your own children. I'm not going to tell you what kind of discipline what that looks like. You know your children and know what will work and what will not work. That's the biggest thing that I can kind of impress right now is once you find your child or your son or daughter using these products, education, talk with them. There's a million different resources. I heard the 211, that is an absolute great thing because we do have a lot of counseling, therapy, drug education things that are out within the city, as well as the county. So we do have the resources to help parents. Coming in March, we're going to start doing, the police department's going to come back with our parent project. So that's going to be able to enforce and kind of reinforce the parents when it comes to all of this stuff. Through our community policing bureau with the police department, which I'm a part of, we're putting together plans now to start doing enforcement when it comes to the local businesses that continue to sell these products. Again, just going after the businesses, as you know, the kids are extremely resilient. If they want to find it, they're going to find it. At the end of the day, the best thing that we can do is educate and be consistent on how we discipline. Just like if we discipline, if they didn't come home or on time, or if they snuck out of the house. There's a lot of things that we got to be consistent to be able to continue to allow them to develop, because guess what? Kids are going to be kids. They're going to make dumb decisions. What we want to do is once they make those decisions, educate them, and hopefully they don't make the same decisions twice. Again, I'm the same way. I'm easily reachable. My email is gcolato, that's COLATO, at semivalley.org. So, and you'll see me on campuses. If you have any questions, any comments, concerns, I'm all ears and more than willing to help you guys out.
Okay. Mr. Gusso, was there anything you wanted to add since you're up here with us? And if not, I'll go to the questions.
Just quickly, just to reiterate the level of seriousness that we take with this. Coincidentally, we are meeting tomorrow with assistant principals across the district to engage in conversations reflecting on the practices that we use, the effectiveness of those practices, and reviewing the policies that we have in place to make sure that we're supporting the kids. So certainly something that is on our radar and will continue to be, and we'll continue the partnerships with the SROs and Officer Collado and so forth as we move forward with it. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to the questions. We have a few in there and we have room and time if anybody wants to ask anything else that hasn't been answered or that wasn't clear enough. Kim is asking if there are any efforts to pass legislation to cap the amount of THC in cartridges or other marijuana related products. I'm guessing maybe Roland, you might be best to answer this, and maybe Jean has some information on that.
I don't actually have any information regarding to that. What I do know is that more and more states are legalizing it. If you look at vapes have been around for at least 15 years, at least popular, and there's still no regulation as to how much nicotine can be, and how there's no regulation as how it's supposed to be informative about how much nicotine is in that product. Like I pointed out in this one of the slides, it's very confusing if they do tell you, if at all. So now we're moving on to THC being in vape products. I have personally seen a cartridge that it was advertised on the box, very high end, as being 95% THC. Now, is that true? Is that just a selling point? I don't know.
Well, I'll even go ahead that if you look at it, the THC is not legal to sell to kids. It's not designed for the kids. It's for the parents, or the parents, I'm sorry, the adults. So I don't foresee that coming. I know for a fact there's nothing in writing to take care of that right now. But that's what they're gonna fall back on, is it's not meant for minors, which neither was vape. But that's kind of where we're at. I wouldn't anticipate, unless people wrote their local congressman or woman and requested something, that would be the only time that I could see them doing that.
And just to point out at the very end of the presentation, I did point out that the Biden administration is actually the first administration to try and tackle the issue of nicotine being in cigarettes. So this has just gone on forever. So I don't know what we can expect with THC, but as Officer Collado pointed out, cigarettes, vapes, THC cartridges, you have to be 21 years of age or older in order to purchase it.
And I was just going to chime in that every time something happens or legislation is passed or flavors are banned, someone finds a way around it. And unfortunately, when we catch them on the campus, we kind of Google the brands because we want to see what the nicotine level is or the THC level is. Because unfortunately, a lot of these kids who have never done this before, and the first time they do it, there's adverse reactions. We have kids that actually we have to call ambulances for, especially for the THC, because there's so much THC in the product that their reaction is really bad. And we end up calling the ambulance, 911, and that's just an issue in itself. But yeah, you definitely have to notice that. If you find something and you want to know about it, you can always Google the brand online and it'll tell you all the information.
Okay, thank you. So we have an anonymous person who's asking, are mental health professionals being involved when students are caught repeatedly? So maybe one of our admins can speak to that.
When we have kids that are repeat offenders on the campus, generally the counselors are and ourselves and even Officer Collado, because the kids love him and they know he's here. We know their backstory. And when we know their backstory, we are doing whatever we can do to help and support that child. So as far as the mental support being provided, we do have school psychologists, we do have counselors available, we do have district support if we need it. So it is being provided. And like I do say, we do invest in our community, we do invest in our parents and our students, and we know those kids. So yes, we are helping them and there is help available.
I have a guest who's asking about if we have the statistics of cases in the senior school district. I'm not sure if we do, but maybe Jerry, you could answer. Not to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, I don't have the specific numbers. Again, and it truly does vary based on the type of incident. Again, possession is very different from use, is very different from selling. I don't have any one statistic that I can share right now. It is something that we remain vigilant about. There is concern, and we did address this to some extent, that students are finding ways of doing it, using the drugs, and we were aware of that, and we do we take preventative measures. We are out and about on campuses. We are providing instruction to our students, trying to make them aware of what these drugs are. And, I would say this also with regards to especially the marijuana. It's not the same marijuana that people purchased 5, 10, 15 years ago. It is so incredibly strong. And we are seeing students have just some terrible reactions. And so, it is something we are constantly on top of, constantly addressing, not just from a punitive perspective, but from a counseling perspective, and from a mentoring perspective. And, again, my hat's off to Mr. Cox. He's got a great relationship with the students, as does Officer Collado. They are both respected, and, again, sharing our wisdom with the students, just addressing it however we can.
Kyle is asking, and Kyle, you're not being naive. He said, I know I'm naive, but you're not. Wants to know how the kids are actually getting the vapes and the products.
I can answer some of that. When talking to them, you have a lot of times you have older siblings that are connected with other people that are out of the city. When you go to some of these stores and say like the San Fernando, even Oxnard, they're not real big on looking for IDs and things to purchase these products. I've also heard of people doing like how kids used to do when they were trying to get alcohol when they were younger, is they'd ask somebody to buy it for them. So that's another option. A lot of them are going online and getting it that way and using somebody else's birthday. And other than the marijuana, the THC, I know because we've actually done stings and things like that. They have to check for an ID when they get there. If they don't, then you're subject to a felony. So they're a lot better on doing it that way with the THC, on asking for verification and so forth. But kids are resilient. They're going to find a way to do this. They're going to have somebody that they know or somebody that they can manipulate to get it for them. So that's kind of the big thing about, we can make a million different laws. Doesn't mean that it's going to stop. The only way that it's going to stop is consistency on the parents and everybody's part. That's part of making that, helping them make good decisions.
I'd like to chime in too, really quickly. I'm sorry. Is if your kids have an Amazon app or you have an Amazon app, it's right there. You can go online and go on Amazon. And just like when we were kids, people, even though cigarettes and other things were not available, we got them. People got them. And that's what it is. Kids, like Officer Collado said, kids are resilient. They get them from other students at school. They get them from everywhere. And that's why we, as parents, that's where Mr. Officer Collado was saying, is have those conversations with them, have those talks, look in their rooms, make sure you're being as vigilant as you can as well.
I want to chime in on that also. A couple of things. I work at a lot of the schools all throughout Ventura County. I work with a lot of student resource officers, and some of the things I've heard is when they do confiscate a vape product and they call their parents start freaking out and yelling because it's theirs. Parents say, well, I want that back. how can I get that back? Now they're arguing about getting their product back rather than being upset about their kid using it. Also, you don't want to give your kids Amazon gift cards or those MasterCard gift cards. All you're doing is you're opening their ability to jump online and purchase these products. And all they have to do is punch in an age that's over 21. Sometimes they have them delivered at a friend's house because they know that the parents are working late or their schedules. And when we talk about really bad reactions, the reality is they are having a psychotic breakdown, a literal break from reality. They're on the ground convulsing, their eyes rolling back in their head and their heads whipping around. They have no idea what reality is. So that's what we're talking about in terms of how strong these THC vape marijuana products are.
Okay.
Oh, one last thing. Sorry, I did notice in the questions. What can you do, or what can we do? Go to your city council meetings. That is the most important thing you could do. Have your voice heard. Collect some neighbors, friends, other parents. Go to those meetings. Make your voices heard. Speak out against it. Here in Ventura, we had a vape shop that wanted to open. I think it was within 1,000 feet of a high school, and that cannot be within that distance. So they're trying to push city council. You know, kids walk right by these, even if it's 1,500 feet away where it's legal, it's going to be on their way to school. Thank you.
I'm not sure if this question can really be answered, and as soon as we're done with it, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer so she can show some of the resources. So if our families can just sit tight for another few minutes, we want to show you what it looks like on the website when you're going to access these resources. But the question is, how often are we finding marijuana on the campus? I would imagine that depends. It's not going to be a set number.
I'll speak to that real quick, and Mr. Cox, if you want to add to this. Being a site administrator and doing tours for a number of years, this is always a question that comes up on tours. And I always have a very similar answer, and it's this: talking to my colleagues around other districts, this is not unique to us. The challenge that exists with marijuana or vaping or any other thing that's happening on campus, it is everywhere. And so if the question is how often are we seeing marijuana on campus, my answer is I would say not any amount that's greater than any other comprehensive school that they're experiencing. And so while with that said, I imagine that's probably somewhat unsatisfactory because you would like to hear the answer that we're never finding it. But certainly we are taking steps and we're putting mechanisms in place to address the issues as you've been hearing throughout the night.
That was pretty much what I was going to say. My kid is now a 9th grader in high school. And I was going to say the same thing. It's not just here, it's everywhere. It's at private schools, public schools, charter schools. It's everywhere. It's across everywhere. My cousin is a counselor in Canada. It's there. It doesn't matter. And as you said, you know, I would like to tell you that it never happens. It does happen. And, you know, it's not all the time, but it's just the same amount as the school next door to us or over the hill. So unfortunately, like I said before, it's here, and knowing about it is the best we can do. And being proactive is what we really need to do.
I think you really need to change your mindset as to when you think about marijuana being in a school, it's not typically the plant. It's not typically the bud that they're smoking. They're using these devices that have a highly concentrated THC oil, and it's easier to disguise. It's easier not to get caught. When we first started doing these presentations, I started talking to some of the SROs that the schools I'd go to, and I'd ask them if they had any vape products that they can donate to us so that we can show them when do we do these presentations. So if we were live in person, I'd have a table full of THC and nicotine based, so you can see what they look like, see what they smell like, how do they feel, just so you can get your mind wrapped around it and that how easy it is to conceal and use these products. And one of the SROs gave me a brown paper bag, sandwich bag, about a third of the way full from one semester of confiscated THC vape products. So they are out there. It's just there's 100 kids have them, you're only going to catch maybe a third of them. So for every one that gets caught, you know there's others that have not gotten caught.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer so she can show our resources and close us out for the evening. So Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Roland, that was great. Thank you, Brian and Jean, for sharing. Can you guys see the screen with the drug abuse and prevention?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the website that we have with all of the resources to what you can find at the schools with me, or even within Ventura County, different websites and such that we utilize. And it is just semivalleyusd.org/substance abuse. So there's a lot of really great information in here. Vaping facts. We have our vaping presentation from 2 years ago. We also, one of the things that was mentioned earlier is we also do have a prevention curriculum that we utilize in 6th through 9th grade. And you can find all of that information here, and we send out letters every year outlining all of the information that we provide to our students to help hopefully with that preventative measure. And so again, it's just kind of one of those websites that you can scroll through, and my contact information is on here as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. One of the other things that I wanted to mention is that we do have, if you happen to know of something, or maybe you're concerned about one of your child's friends, or you just kind of know of something, we do have an anonymous Google form that we are transitioning to a new product that we will be utilizing, we'll be putting out to everybody in the next couple of weeks. But as of right now, this is what you can utilize and submit. And we do look into every tip that is submitted. And you can also find it at any of the school sites. It's pretty much on their home pages. So we'll just go to Hillside right here. And so you would find the anonymous tip link right here. So it'll be on the front page of all of the schools. And once we switch out to our new platform, the button will still be the same. It'll just lead you to our new platform. And then Jake asked that I also show our upcoming workshops. So you can navigate that too by going to Simi Valley website and clicking on the parents page. And Jake, what's the topic from there that they click on? The parent workshops right here.
And it's the
And so this is
workshops, not the upcoming.
Oh, sorry. So it'll be the archive workshop. So you'll be able to find any of the workshops that we've hosted. You'll be able to take a look at the videos through here.
And we'll be posting tonight's workshop in that section also. So that will be up probably, what's today? Thursday?
Today's Wednesday.
By Monday.
Okay. So I think that's it. So thank you everyone for attending this evening. Thank you so much, Roland and Brian and Jean and Mr. Guzzo and Dr. Block. We really appreciate your participation and hope that you've really found this information helpful and informative. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We are happy to help support our families. So thank you and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Betsy and Yvonne.
Yes, thank you, Betsy and Yvonne. Thank you so much.